Your Next Big Move podcast for anyone involved in the buying and selling of businesses that wants to know how to do it right. Hosted by Zoran and brought to you by Exclusive Business Sales. Sell your business with certainty.
Hello everyone. Today my guest is Peter Fennell from United Business Brokers. Peter is a business broker specializing in selling automotive businesses. In this episode I discuss with Peter the market for automotive businesses, what buyers are looking for, what value of these businesses is, and the current industry conditions in general. If you own mechanic workshop, body repair shop, or some other business in automotive industry, this episode is for you. So let's get into it. Hello, Peter, and
Hey,
good to see you again.
And to you, mate.
And thanks for agreeing to do this with us.
No problems whatsoever.
Before we start, what I want to talk about today is selling businesses in automotive industry. Now, you specialize in automotive.
That's right.
And there's a reason why you got into automotive industry. So can you tell me a bit about your history and how did you get into business broking and why automotive industry?
Yeah. So when I left high school, I became a licensed motor mechanic and spent 17 and a half years within the industry. And after that particular period, I worked as a motor mechanic. I did my panel beating and spray painting in post-trade courses after work, and then went on to work at the New South Wales Rural Fire Service for 4.5 years as their plant and equipment inspector, and then moved over to New South Wales Police in their fleet division to help with the engineering on New South Wales police vehicles.
Okay.
And then when the Bali bombing happened, a lot of the contractors were let go for the anti-terrorism unit. And I looked at life and said, okay, what do we need to be doing at this particular point? And so I got completely out of the automotive industry and went and started a real estate office.
Okay.
So
That's a bit of a change.
Absolutely, a bit of a change. But I'd always been into property purchasing and could really pick out an agent's face when doing negotiations with agents.
Okay.
You know, so I knew when they got really excited when I got close to a price that was going to be accepted by an owner. So I decided I would take on that career path and went and worked for the LJ Hooker. And within 3 to 4 months, I left LJ Hooker and went out and opened up Rain and Horn in Caringbah in New South Wales, Sydney.
Yeah.
And ran that business for 12 years under the Rain and Horn banner for the first 5 years, and then under my own banner for the next 7 years under Peter Fennell Real Estate. During that time, at the end of when I decided to leave the real estate behind, I'd had enough of working on Saturdays and not spending time with my children. I have three girls, they were all young at that stage. And I'd helped other friends to sell their rent rolls and their real estate businesses. And from there, I decided that I'd give business broking a go. So I went and did my courses and decided that I would go and work for one of the competing large business broking firms in Sydney, and was there for 2 years and learned a lot, actually. And then I decided that I'd go and do it on my own, and I've been doing that successfully for the last, I think, nearly 10 years now.
And you decided to specialize in automotive because you knew the industry?
Because my industry background and knowledge in the industry. So knowing cars, playing with cars, still playing with cars today. I have some old Holdens that I play with, and I'm involved with different car groups and things along those lines.
Okay. And look, in preparation for this little conversation, I've done some research on the industry, and it was quite amazing. I've got some numbers here.
Yep.
And there's about 26,000, a little bit more than 26,000 businesses Australia-wide.
Yep.
And this doesn't include panel beating. So this is just the mechanics, auto electricians, and spare parts.
Yep.
And they employ collectively about 80,000 people in this country. It's quite large. But another thing that really struck me was quite surprising, that 1% of the businesses turnover under 10 million, so they're small businesses.
Correct.
Yeah. And average business turns over about 450,000.
Yep.
So these 450,000 turnover businesses, I would imagine there would be one mechanic and having a helper.
Well, in a lot of cases, they're family businesses where you might have the husband's a mechanic, the wife runs the office and things along those lines. So it's a family, small business as such, which there's quite a lot of throughout Australia.
Okay, so it's a type of you got a job for yourself.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And another thing, most of the industry is servicing the households. So
correct.
Yeah,
mum and dad vehicles.
Yeah.
And some of those businesses are generational as well, where they've serviced granddads, then dads, then now the children.
Okay, so they're long-standing businesses.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of that?
Because of trust. Trust is a big part in automotive. You hear of, the people getting ripped off by the mechanic that they haven't used before, and then you hear of the people that have stayed with the same mechanic, and sometimes the mechanics retire, and that's when I come in to be involved in a lot of these businesses.
And the other part, which is 14.5% is business and government, but only 8.4% is transport.
Correct.
So transport, I would imagine, these are buses and trucks.
Buses and trucks in the industry, and small fleets as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, there would be more business and government. So in these three segments, which are more desirable businesses when they go on the market? Is it businesses that do household vehicles, or is it a business to business?
It really depends. You'll find a lot of the businesses, they will have fleet work and they'll have a lot of mum and dad work. Mm-hmm. So they're sort of desirable, because if you link yourself a lot to fleet and just do fleet work, the paying of the fleet companies can be monthly or, things along those lines. So
you got to run accounts for them.
You got to run
accounts.
It's
hard on the cash flow.
That's right. Cash flow is a lot harder. Whereas if mum and dad come in and have their car serviced, they're paying that afternoon, and then they're off and the money's in your bank account.
Okay, same day pretty much. Well, when they pick up a car, they pay for it.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, profit factors. When I was doing the research, I find some stuff here, and I agree with a lot of this, but I think there's more to that. Mm-hmm. So the profit factors that I find is proximity to the market.
Yep.
All right. Access to high-skilled labor, which is a problem at the moment.
Absolutely.
But it's a problem across the board at
Correct.
the moment. After-sales service.
Yes.
So I would imagine these are dealers.
Absolutely. Anything after sales where they're buying a car, and then the dealer is designed to try and lock you in for as many years as possible,
mm-hmm.
To keep servicing that vehicle.
Do dealers make more money on servicing vehicles or selling vehicles?
I would say they probably make a lot more money servicing vehicles, depending on who they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like your normal everyday, Corolla or a Camry versus a Mercedes or a BMW or something along those lines, your servicing prices are obviously quite high with European vehicles. And when I'm looking at different mechanical workshops, the ones that are servicing the European market and have locked into that market are making far more profit than ones that are doing the everyday Corolla or your Ford Falcon or your Commodore.
Why is that? Just because
servicing costs. So if you go and have your Corolla serviced, then it's cost you $200 to $300, $400 for a service. At Toyota, then you're used to that sort of pricing. When you're dealing with Mercedes and BMW and things along those lines, an average service can be $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, $3,000, depending on the vehicle. But the reality is the profitability of the mechanic doing the job is very similar in the hourly rate.
Well, the cost.
So
mechanic.
If you're servicing a BMW and you pay $1,000, $1,500, you're accustomed to paying that sort of cost. Whereas if you're servicing a Corolla and it's $200-$300, then you're again accustomed to that.
So what you're telling me,
more profitable, absolutely.
So what you're telling me, when I got an expensive car, I'm not getting any better service. I'm just paying more for it.
Correct. Exactly. It's all perception in the marketplace.
Good to know.
It's called badge engineering.
Yeah. Now, with this problem with the labour, like
Yes.
there's been a lot of talk in the past and still is. I mean, there's a problem with labour in general at the
That's
moment.
right.
But even prior to COVID and go back 10 years, there was a problem that there was a less and less apprentices
Correct.
entering the industry.
That's right.
So how's the industry dealing with that?
Well, I don't think they're dealing with it too well at the moment. It's getting children that are going to want to leave school and become mechanics, and it's not sexy anymore like it may have been when I left school. So, I talk to a lot of kids and they all want to go to uni and be lawyers and doctors and, psychologists and things along those lines. So it's not necessarily a sexy industry to be in, and it's very tough. And if you're very good, the money is out there for you, and different mechanical shops will want to pay you. But it's not just the service work. Where the real money is in diagnostics. So if you got someone that's very good at diagnosing problems in these vehicles, then they're worth a lot. They can make good money in the field. But again, the money, the reason I left being a mechanic is the money. I love being a mechanic, but the money's just not there. When you go to work and you work your 5 days a week and your wife is a secretary and she earns more than you, there's a bit of a problem in the way that people are remunerated.
And can I ask you a question? When you left your last job before you started working for yourself, why didn't you buy a mechanic shop and start working as a mechanic?
Again.
Did you consider it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I did consider it. I suppose I looked at the cost involved in preparing a workshop and the leases involved and where you could be, because obviously if you're in an area like we're in right now, which is, down in Balmain area, a workshop's very hard to come by at a reasonable rent. But the other problem that you have in these types of areas in the inner city is parking for the vehicles as well. So getting the cars in and out is a difficult process because you might only have a 1 hour parking. So you've got to get your customers conditioned to coming in and through the day, dropping the car off, getting it serviced, and off it goes, because it runs a very expensive parking lot if you're getting cars booked all the time in those streets. Yeah. So, but also after 17 years, I was looking for something else to do.
Yeah, a bit of a change.
Something new and exciting.
So, anecdotally, when you look at the industry as a whole, how many of them are making good money? How many of them are doing all right? How many of them are really not making money?
I think that a good percentage, and I would say somewhere along the line of 20% would not be making very good money whatsoever. And then you have others that are on the extreme end. The top 10% are making very good money, where they're very good business operators. So you don't have to necessarily be a mechanic in order to own one of these businesses. So some of the best businesses I see, these people have come from completely different corporate backgrounds and run it like a corporate. And those businesses make more money because they're more focused on the monetary, this part of my business is turning over this much, this part of my business does this. They're more focused like a corporate entity on how that business works. So they will hire staff in different areas to really pump those areas and really get the daily rate up.
So what would very good mechanic shop make in terms of profits?
Some of them are up in profit, up around $500,000.
Okay.
That seems to be a very good rate. So a lot in our industry, we use what we describe as PBITDA, which are proprietors' earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization.
So it includes a profit
owner's wage.
And a wage.
And the wage for the owner, and there's superannuation. So looking at those types of things, because a lot of them are buy yourself a job. So they're another mechanic coming in, buying the business, and they're going to look at what income they're going to take from that business as of what the current owner is, and they look at what they're going to do to improve that business as well.
So before we get into selling of the businesses, and we're still talking about the industry, there's a lot more electric cars coming on the market.
That's true.
And with electric cars, they need less maintenance, or do they?
Well, obviously the oil changes aren't there and the oil filters and things along those lines, but you will still be looking at, tyres and things along those lines that will still have to, used and brakes and all the other bits and pieces. And there's a lot of other componentry, not just, the engine, because obviously you've got electric motors running at the wheels, but you still have doors and electronics. So a lot more of the people going to come into our industry, the automotive, auto electrician type thing, they'll still know what they're doing and be able to jump into these areas. Whereas your average mechanic that used to just do an oil change, that's going to change dramatically and has over the last 20 years.
Is that a problem, like in terms of finding a new skills or people with skills that can
Absolutely.
So how's the industry dealing with that?
Well, I don't know that the industry is dealing with it very well. I think they're going to have to bring people in from overseas, to be honest with you, with skilled migration for servicing our vehicles into the future. A lot of otherwise you're going back to the dealer. Now, the dealers are very skilled at what they're doing because they've got factory backing. And if there's issues at the factory, they're getting the bulletins and things along those lines from the factory saying, hey, this is an issue, look for this during its next service. So I think that, the mechanic of the day is starting to not get as much information, although they should, out of the dealerships. And the dealerships are wanting that resale service. So they want you to come back to the dealer. So they're extending warranties and things along those lines for you having your service done at the dealer.
So if somebody buys the mechanic shop and is a mechanic and he needs a help with some issues or the problems with particular model of the car,
yes,
is there a way? Can they go anywhere to get help? Can they go to manufacturer and say, hey,
they can?
Yeah, or do they just Google and see what comes on forums?
Well, Google is one of the things that a lot of the mechanics will use these days to see what's going on out there and what other people are doing to fix different issues. 100%, a lot of people are using that. Although the dealers and the manufacturers are meant to give out that information to the industry, they still withhold information and not give it out to anybody else in the industry. They try and keep that to their dealers.
To protect
themselves.
And to increase earnings for
Absolutely.
Dealers and the people that are
That's right.
them.
That's where the contract and where the money is.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. And so what about diagnostic tools? You touched on diagnostic, but you didn't talk about the tools because there's more and more electronics in the
100%.
cars.
Yeah.
So, and these things are not easy to fix.
No.
I mean, well, they're not hard, like everything is, but it's hard to diagnose without the right equipment.
Correct.
I was doing some reading about this. It seems to be a bit of a problem there because some of these equipment may going to be specific for a particular model.
Correct.
And it's not cheap to purchase.
Correct. So what you'll
small mechanics deal
find
with that?
in the small mechanics, a lot of them will have scanners and other items that they will have. But what they'll traditionally do, so I live down in Sutherland Shire, and when I sell workshops in that particular area, you'll get about 5 or 6 of the local mechanics that know each other and they'll work together and they'll share that diagnostics equipment. So it's not necessarily competition for competition's sake. It's more, we're all in the area, there's enough work for all of us. I'll buy this particular machine that might work on a BMW. So if you get a problem, don't buy the same machine. You buy the one for the Mercedes or you buy the one for the Audi or whatever the case may be. And they will share that amongst each other.
How expensive are some of those pieces of equipment?
Thousands and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. So they're not cheap.
Not cheap at all.
Yeah, no.
So they kind of get together, and is that unwritten rule?
No, it's not an unwritten rule. It's I think when you've been in an area for so long,
you get to
know all the other mechanics in the area. You know who's the good and who's the bad. But you also get to know who you can talk to about other issues. And I think even in our industry, it's very, very similar. In business broking, a lot of us know each other, and a lot of us can call each other, and we're fairly open to be able to
help each other.
Absolutely.
Now, question for you: when you're selling a business in this industry, would you, as a part of the process, introduce them to those contacts and those mechanics, or it doesn't really happen?
No, definitely. And normally what I'll say to a seller is to take them and introduce them to those people, because most sellers have built their businesses from scratch. They don't want to see that business now pass to someone else and fail. They want to see it produce and go further. So in a roundabout way, it's in their interest to introduce them to the other players in the marketplace. And a lot of them will, and say, hey, this is Bob, this is Peter. He's just bought my business. If he needs a hand with any diagnostics, or vice versa, if you need our machine down here, have a talk to Tom. He'll be able to help you out. So introduction is a big part of it as well.
And who are the buyers and who are the sellers in the industry?
Predominantly the sellers are people looking to retire. So where the kids are not mechanics or they have no interest in that particular field. Mm-hmm. So it's not a natural pass it on to the next generation. So a lot of the sales are people that are looking to retire now, and they're looking to move on. And I'm finding a lot more since COVID, people have looked at their lives a lot more and looked at, hey, I don't have to be in Sydney. I can go and live in Noosa or somewhere else. A lot of people are moving outside of Sydney and looking for somewhere to go. So they're trying to sell to that next generation.
And the businesses are not the ones that you can do remotely.
Well, no.
So you have to offload the business.
Well, once you move out of an area, like most businesses are area specific. So like if you're in Balmain, you'll deal with a lot of local people in Balmain.
Yeah.
So if you're in Caringbah, you'll deal with a lot of people in Southern Shire that will follow you. So moving from one end of a suburb to another.
Is there a difference in supply and demand of the businesses in different geographical regions?
Yes. So and again, it depends on where the buyers live. Again, so if the buyer lives in Western Sydney, there'll be you'll have a lot more buyers in Western Sydney because there's a lot more tradesmen in Western Sydney that want to buy the businesses. In the eastern suburbs, a lot of the workshops are being demolished when demolitions are taking place because the properties are worth so much as the development site for
the best value is development.
That's right. So from the property owner's point of view, one of the big things that we definitely look at is demolition clauses in leases. Mm-hmm. So which makes a big difference because you'll find that a lot of the ones that throughout the eastern suburbs are gone these days and they've been bulldozed and turned into a block of flats.
And they tend to be larger properties because of what you said, you need a parking for the vehicles.
Correct. That's right. So, and the ones that are there could have heritage listing on them, so they can't be knocked down.
So are we seeing disappearance of the mechanics closer to the city because of the pricing? Yeah.
That's right. The pricing of the property outstrips what the mechanic's going to pay for rent. Uh-huh. So
you just can't run a profitable business too close to the city. Well, you can, but it's harder.
You need to be running a lot more vehicles through and moving those vehicles in and out quickly.
Does the market allow you to charge better prices if you're closer to the city?
I think you have to charge better prices because your rent is going to be double
what it is. No, you have to, but do people choose then to go further because it's cheaper to service the vehicle?
Not really. I think it's a little bit like, if you live in the area, if you want to drive 10 kilometres to the next place to get it $10 cheaper in the service, or are you happy to use someone that you've used for a long time in a particular area and have, because it's not just about price and getting your car serviced. And as we were talking earlier, it's about, like we talk about after sales service. If you have your vehicle serviced and your mechanic says, hey, Zoran, your brake pads were worn out and I rang you about that, but can I just show you what actually it is? Because not a lot of people will know what that part is. So I could show you a new one and a worn out one so you could have an understanding so that we've built up a relationship. So the cost is not necessarily everything. It's more that after sale, then you trust that particular mechanic.
Do you see a lot more technology being used, like general technology, like videos and photos in the industry where I take photos as I go through the repairs and show you everything from the beginning to the end?
I don't think there's a lot of people out there doing that for their client, but I know that a lot of the mechanics are using photos and things along those lines when they're pulling apart an engine for some particular item so they can remember where everything goes back, because there's so many electronic components now, and even back in the days of air vacuum hoses and things like that going in a million different places in some of these engines, knowing where things go back together and how they go back together is seriously important.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a room for the technology because of that trust. I can't show you brake pads, you come in and I'll show you what I've done, but I can send you photos of those.
Yeah, that's true. But how do you know that's from your car and things along those lines? So I think there is room for that to be able to show people. Again, it comes down to an hourly rate of what you're going to be charging. And if you're adding 15 minutes of video to that and then talking to the client about it,
cost goes up.
Where the cost, that's right.
And so buyers of these businesses, what do they look for?
Well, I think a lot of the buyers are mechanics themselves, and they're looking to run their own business. They've worked for someone else for quite some time, and the opportunities come up where they're at the right age. They might have some equity in their home, and they're looking to buy businesses, and some where the parents are assisting the children into buying businesses. So the kids might have become a mechanic, been a mechanic for a few years, worked at a dealership or a workshop or wherever the case may be. And then mum and dad has funded the kids into a workshop.
But, okay, are there any specific areas? Do you see people looking more towards the city, away from the city, or are there different buyers in each area? Or
There
just
is
depends
different
where you
buyers.
live, yeah.
Oh, 100%. So I just sold one at Picton, and people that lived in Picton bought it. Now, they wouldn't look at another one that's going to be in the eastern suburbs because it's too far for them to come.
Yeah. So for those that don't know where Picton is, that's outskirts of Sydney.
Outskirts of Sydney, that's right. So,
and but also, are there any other specifics in the, like, what are the value drivers?
Okay, so
in mechanic shops,
again, like a lot of other businesses, when we're looking at businesses looking at the value of that business under the EBITDA or PBITA, then we've got to look at the equipment value as well, and what are they making out of that piece of equipment. Probably the best example I can give is some of the guys will buy a chassis dyno and want to put cars on dynos to be able to tune them to high performance tuning. Now, they may not use that piece of equipment. That equipment could be $200,000.
Yep.
So, but they don't use it every day, and they're not making a good advantage of that piece of equipment. So sometimes you've got to say to them, well, maybe you're better off selling that piece of equipment separately before we go to the market, opening up that floor space and putting another hoist so that people can actually use that floor space, because you're not going to get that value of that $200,000 piece of equipment back in the sale. So as you and I both well know, that when you're looking at those types of things, it's not the equipment's not an extra. It's like a baker. If you don't have the oven, you can't cook the bread.
So let's unpack this differently, a little bit deeper. So what you're saying, if you got a piece of equipment that's not utilized to its maximum, sometimes it's better off selling that piece of equipment separately. Correct. Okay, you're going to lose some income because that equipment is not there, but that sale.
But it may not be enough income to even worry about having it, if you can understand my meaning.
I understand, because value, the money that you're going to receive for that equipment
is not there.
It'll outweigh the money that you'll have to discount your business for loss of that profit. Yeah,
that's right. Exactly.
Does that happen often?
Not often, but it's probably the best example I can give you of a particular item that I see in shops.
Yeah.
That I say to my clients, look, you may be better off if you know someone that will buy that off you for 150 grand. You might be better to realise the value in that now.
Okay, is there a market for that type of equipment, and is it hard to sell?
There is a market, but it's a very small market, because performance tuning might be great for race cars and things like that if that's what you do every day as a mechanic.
Okay,
but not everyone's doing that work every day. They're doing servicing. And when you take your Audi in for a service, it doesn't need to go on the chassis dyno to be able to abstract the most performance out of that vehicle.
So these performance, how do you call them? Performance
workshops?
Performance workshops. Is there a market for them? Or is there more market or less market for them?
No, less market.
Less market. It's very specialised.
Well, it's very specialised and knowledge-based. You have to have almost worked in that industry within your career to know what you learn through that industry, because it's not something that is taught necessarily when you go to TAFE.
So if you got one of those shops, how would you go about selling it?
Well, it's about attacking the market in the right way. So with myself, one of the advertising ways that I advertise a lot of the businesses that I have is through Facebook. So within Facebook, there's a lot of groups in Facebook. So I try and join as many automotive groups as I possibly can, and then I'll put my listing up on that Facebook page, on that group, to say, hey guys, if anyone's looking for a performance business in, say, the Campbelltown area or the Liverpool area or whatever the case may be, feel free to share this ad with them and have them contact me if they have an interest in those.
So you have to find those specific people that know how.
That's right. Because you're not going to go walking into a workshop and saying to all the employees, hey, I've got a business over here. The owner's going to kick you out pretty quick.
Well, that's another thing. You got to keep it confidential, but you got to tell people that's happening. Now, back to just your general types of mechanics, mechanic workshops that do service and repairs.
Yes.
So on the market, they're easier to sell, or they're more desirable from buyer's point of view?
Yes, absolutely. So it really does come down to the guy that does the general servicing. All mechanics, as they go through TAFE and do their courses and things like those, they learn that general servicing. It's the day-to-day bread and butter of any mechanical workshop. Where I really see a big difference in profitability of these businesses is there's a couple of different things that I've seen in my history of selling businesses, and this is not just automotive. But in automotive, the guys that do European cars seem to be more profitable. The other thing that I've also noticed in looking at profit and loss statements and things along those lines is seeing the advertisement that the different people do. So I noticed that the more money they spend on advertising, the more profitable the businesses are. But also the other thing that I've noticed is the more money that the person spends with an accountant, they are also, again, more profitable because their accountant is spending more time in their business and helping them.
Adjust the prices, look at the different...
they look from a business aspect.
Yeah.
So a lot of mechanics will go, I'm looking from it from this aspect, and they might go, I'll just charge you this, where you might not be charging.
There is no structure around how much you charge, what you charge.
Well, you're not taught that it's not, when you go to become a mechanic, you're not taught to run a business.
You're taught
to
fix the cars.
That's right, exactly. So an accountant, I believe that everyone should work pretty hard to work with their accountant and spend more money with the accountant because he's going to help you make money and help you build your business. And
good advice.
I find that to be one of the most, if I was to say to someone, if you're going to look to sell your business in the next 3 to 4 years, I would be saying, get a good accountant or work a lot closer with your accountant. Don't worry about the bill that he's going to give you. It's more that the advice that he's going to give you is going to be able to sell your business at a better price because he'll look at different areas of your business that you don't even know about because you're not taught that, but he is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so putting that structure together is super important.
Now, rather than profit, what are the other value drivers in this type of businesses, in automotive businesses?
Look, to be honest with you, you could look at different areas and things along those lines of where the businesses are. But when it comes down to it, it does come down to profit and the equipment that you're getting with the business.
So the equipment?
Yeah, the equipment.
So the quality and the age of the equipment?
Age of the equipment. All the equipment is certified. So a lot of the hoists and things along those lines have to be certified every year, every 12 months. So if that certification's done, if the equipment's old, people can sometimes look at the equipment and go, oh, everything needs to be replaced. I need to spend another $150,000 when I come here. So the buyers are going to look at that and go, I want to discount the business by $100,000 because I need to get new equipment.
Are these, because you touched on that earlier, are these businesses connected to the owner? Are the customers of these businesses connected more to the owners or to the location they're in?
I would say a little bit of both. So, and the only example I can give you, because I lived it, is I grew up and worked in Camperdown. So, and in Camperdown, a lot of the nurses and doctors from RPA used to come down to the workshop, but they'd come there for years. And the generations of nurses and doctors would say, go down to the garage and talk to Philip, which was my old boss. And people got used to the comfort of working with him. but they would come to work and then take the car there because they could then walk from the hospital down to the workshop as well. So convenience is a big thing. But then the trust in that mechanic to do the right thing throughout the day on your vehicle and not rip you off is they're the two big drivers.
So if I was to buy the a mechanic shop, how do I gauge how much trust they got? How much is the location? How much is the trust?
Google says everything these days. First thing I do when you ring me and say, hey, Peter, I want to sell my business, is I'm Googling your phone number and where you are, because a lot of people don't want to tell me. So Google gives you up all the time. Yeah. So if you ring me on your work phone, I can normally find out who you are. And Google has street view, so I can even tell you who your neighbours are. Yeah. But Google will also have people that are not happy. If you're a bad mechanic, people will tell you. Mm-hmm. And from my point of view, I will look at those businesses and look at not every business is worth me selling.
So the buyer's going to do the same thing.
Correct.
They're going to look at your
Google reviews
and see, do people trust you or don't trust
you. Correct, absolutely.
But what about, let me play devil's advocate here, all right? What about if I find a business that's making a good money but it's got bad reviews? Well, I can make even more money if I start servicing these people, but it does affect the price.
Absolutely. So you might, that business might be worth less to that particular buyer. And they might see, okay, well, I can buy this business because I want the area and I'm from the area, and I can buy this business because it's a bad business and I can make it a good business, but they'll normally change the name of the business and put up the big monkey with, under new management out the front.
Yeah.
So
I know that in bodyworks and panel beating and what do you call it in your industry?
Or the smash repair industry.
There is a bit of a consolidation, and there's a few groups that buying not small businesses, but like medium-sized businesses.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Is anything of that kind happening in mechanic workshops?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I agree in mechanics and smash repairs. Some of them are going away from a bit of that at the moment, because there's a bit of a tough time in the smash repair industry, where the insurance companies don't really want to pay the hourly rate that the panel beaters want to charge.
That's always been like that.
It has.
I've been listening to this story forever. All right, I always want more as the person charging. As the insurer, they always pay as little as possible.
Well, this is true, but there's different insurance companies that you want to do your work from. I've been involved with insurance companies myself over many years, and there's some insurance companies I wouldn't give $1 to, because they're going to send your car to some place that doesn't really care about your car.
Okay,
and you might love your car.
Please don't name any names.
So I won't name any names.
Do any editing. During the COVID,
yes,
what was happening? I mean, I don't know, all right, but I would assume that because of we were locked down for months on end, and we were not driving the cars, so I would assume there was less work for the industry. Or am I wrong?
I would say that it really can, again, depend, because some of the mechanics did quite well during that particular period.
How's that?
Well, if you're an essential worker, which the mechanics were, so they could all go to work, but also if
I'm going to work if no one's coming to see me?
Yeah, but they were. People were looking at the opportunity of getting those jobs done on their cars that would normally take maybe a week to get done, where you couldn't leave your car for a week with a mechanic before, but now I can drop it off. I can get all that work done that needed to be done now while he's got a few days to do it.
So when you look at the trading of the company, 2019, 20, 21, 22...
It's very difficult to give you an exact example because they're all different.
So
some made good money and others
some went
didn't.
up.
Absolutely.
What about post-COVID?
Post-COVID?
Yeah.
A lot of people are... Well, the thing is that what's happening currently is that you can't buy a new car. There's a 18-month, 2-year wait on a new car. Not all cars, but quite a lot.
It's starting to change.
It's changing now. Yeah. So you had to keep your old car for longer, so you had to service it more.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a lot of the guys that I speak to started to see issues with vehicles that were getting repaired. So before, if a head gasket went on your car, you might look at, I'll trade the car in or I'll get rid of it type thing. I'll just sell it for nothing on Facebook, eBay, whatever the case may be. Now, hang on a minute. We can't get a new car, so we have to do that repair. And that's where a lot of them were doing a lot of those repairs that they normally wouldn't see, where the people didn't service their cars as much and blew head gaskets and things along those lines, or radiators and the general maintenance. Yep. So now they had the opportunity of doing that, because you can't go out and buy a brand new car tomorrow.
And also, it wasn't using cars much, so it's time to do it.
That's right.
When you're selling a business, how do you ensure that the value or trading continues, or value trade? Because you got to, there is no issue with the businesses that they're there because of the location and convenience.
Yes.
What about the businesses that mechanics got a lot of connection with the clients? How do you ensure that those clients are transferred to the buyer?
Well, look, I say to the buyer, in a lot of cases, you want to be as friendly as possible as you can with the clientele, and because a lot of those, I sold a particular workshop down in Caringbah. The guy had been in the workshop for possibly around 50 years. People were very comfortable. Families used to come with a case of beer at Christmas just to give the mechanic a case of beer to thank him for his years of service. Yeah. Right? That business sold. One of the two owners decided that he would stay on and work with the business on a wage for at least 3 months, and that ensured that those customers had the same face, one of the same faces coming in there and being able to talk to that person.
Gets introduced. Look, that's a problem, or that's something that needs to be addressed in every transfer of the business.
Absolutely.
But in mechanics, especially smaller mechanics,
they're gone.
It's really, really important, because I know the guy. I know the person on the other hand, and I 100%. Always see him, and he always greets me and knows my name, and I call him up and he answers, "Hey Zoran, how's it going?" And we have a bit of a chat about life in general before I get that car. So you have to put some sort of mechanisms in.
It's a very difficult one, because everyone's a different character. And, you and I might have had a relationship for a long period of time. So sometimes the handover period could be a little bit longer, so that you can ensure that part of it. But I say to a lot of buyers, look, you got to treat people well. If you want to have a good long-term business, because you're buying a good long-term business, treat the customers with respect. If you treat customers no matter what, you won't get it. Even if you've got the best owner and he treats the customers bad, they will leave in a heartbeat. They'll look for someone else. So how you treat people is seriously important. But again, I say to buyers and sellers, look, what you want to do is I think in our business, we want to have a win-win situation, a win for the buyer, a win for the seller. So looking at the businesses and going, okay, so try not to hammer the owner too much in some of the negotiation points, because you still want to remain friendly at the end of that they will answer their phone to you 2 months down the track.
Because you'll need them down the track.
You're going to need those people to ask the question, this guy's come in and there's a warranty claim on something that was done previously, right? So, hang on a minute. Just check the book to see if it had that service done and things along those lines.
So if I drive hard bargain when I'm buying a business today,
the owner might throw the mobile phone in the bin the next day.
It's not going to help.
Never answer you ever again.
It's true. And it's a good advice for every business that you
absolutely.
sell. Really, don't bargain down to the cent.
That's right. Yeah, leave a little bit of love money in there.
Build some goodwill.
You've got to have the goodwill, because you're buying goodwill,
and it's going to hurt you more.
That's right.
Than what.
A couple of little arguments, or
what
a
few bucks that
here.
you saved on
That's
purchasing.
Right. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about this transition, and what are the challenges when selling this type of businesses?
To be honest, it's really that personal relationship thing with the clientele and the staff as well. So if you've got staff in a lot of the businesses, sometimes the staff are very happy with their employer, sometimes they're not. Sometimes you'll work better with the staff because you've got a different personality. Personality clashes in all businesses, whether it's a mechanic shop or any other business, can really divide a business. So looking at those types of things and how you're going to work with the other people. And again, different cultures can work well together or not so well together. And that can be another part of what we see. And I see it, and I've been told, where I've had buyers from the subcontinent, and they've said to me, Peter, if I come in and I go in that business and I've got darker skin than the Aussie that's leaving there, I'm going to lose 50% of the business the minute I walk in the door. So, but what they can do is that they can pay that owner to hang around for a while and introduce people. Because we're not, although people can be racist in Australia and everywhere else in the world, what you'll find is we're actually very good at accepting different cultures in our country, to be honest with you. Is that once you get to know me and we get to know each other, the nationality or the culture clash is gone. You become friendly. No one cares.
Look, that happens often from incoming buyers that they think, look, they're not going to like me for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
But often it's a misuse of imagination.
Correct.
It comes down to service.
Absolutely.
Like, you got to be a nice person. You got to be nice to your clients. So don't be a jerk. All right. Don't.
That doesn't matter what business.
Don't upset them.
Yep.
All right. But it comes down to the service, being fair. Yep. And it's a service on the industry, fair,
100%.
honest, quick, on time.
Yep.
So any business that you're looking, you got to focus on that, not on your background, but what you can do once when you pass the business to actually
Correct.
do it. You have to do same or better than previous owner.
Correct.
And impact on your business is going to be much lower. There's always a problem with transition.
That's right.
And you're going to lose some customers, but also because of your personality and your contacts, you're going to bring some customers.
Correct, absolutely.
So it's a fantastic result if you can actually level that out.
That's right.
All right. But there is a risk
100%.
in every business that you're buying, and even if it's online business and no one sees you,
Yep.
all right, how quickly you're going to, respond to everything. So and we get that all the time, like, how's this business going to impact, what impact my ownership is going to have on the business from buyer's point of view? Well, the answer is it will have an impact one way or the other, all right? What you have to do is you got to ask yourself, can I do this job as good as a previous guy? Or better. And if the answer is no, well, don't buy it.
Well, the thing that I try to say to a lot of buyers is, yes, this is what the business is making now under the current ownership. Now, do you think you're better at being able to service the clientele and will build the business? So are you better manager than the current guy that's leaving? So you've got to look at what are you bringing to the table. And I think that's an important thing for buyers to think about. What are you going to bring to the table to improve the business? And I don't mean, a new fresh coat of paint and things along those lines to make it look pretty. I mean, what are you actually going to bring to the table in the way you're going to run it compared to the old owner?
Okay.
So look at the future prospects of the business under your management. Do you think you're a good enough person to
You can look at the past to determine present, but the future is up to you once we take it out.
That's right.
You don't have to pay for what you're going to do, but like it'll help you make a decision.
That's right.
Should I do this or not?
Correct.
Now, when you're looking at the business, in terms of like analyzing business before you're taking it to the market,
yes.
What are the ratios? What are the financial points that you're looking at? What are the points of the business that you're looking at? And what I'm getting at is, are the wages important? Do you know what level of wages they should have?
Yes.
Where the rent needs to sit, cost of spare parts, profit margins, what's your hourly rate and so forth. So can you tell us a bit about that? What are important things and what the buyers and what you're looking at?
Yeah, look, when I was a mechanic, we used to keep a lot of parts in stock. Now, a lot of the guys don't keep all the parts in stock anymore. I'd be surprised if many of them keep anywhere between 5 to 10 grand's worth of parts. Mm-hmm. Most of that will be oils and things along those lines, because now they can ring up Burson's or Repco or some of the auto parts suppliers and have that part there when the car comes in. So you can ring up, or on
Is it the same day delivery?
Same day delivery. Sometimes I get 3 or 4 deliveries in a day or more, depending on who they are. So you can let the auto parts companies hold the stock. You don't need to hold the stock that we used to hold. So stock levels not as a burden on the companies as what they used to be, because of those deliveries are so much better than what they were. So looking at hourly rates and things like that is important. Looking at the rent that you're going to pay, looking at wages that you're paying, making sure all the guys...
Length of lease, you don't want to get kicked out. You mentioned earlier,
that's right.
Hey, is the demolition closed and somebody's going to develop it and you're going...
When I'm looking at a lease, I'm also looking at the DA for the business. Is there a DA in place for that premises to run a mechanical workshop?
So DA is a...
development application through your local council to
Which
be able
tells
to run that business, whether it's a hairdresser or a mechanic.
Yeah.
They all have to have approval of the local council to be able to operate that type of business in that particular
You find
workshop.
often businesses that operate without
a lot.
Proper DA?
Yes, it's my first question to people is DA, and the second question is, if you've got a lease, is there a demolition clause in the lease? So,
Well, I've got an opinion on this DA, but what's your opinion? Why some businesses operating with the wrong DA?
they think it's too hard, and in some areas they might not get the DA. So, but
well, that's a problem. There's a
councils-
reason. Well, look, my opinion on that is a little bit different, all right?
Yeah.
So often businesses morph into something else. So you got to start this business as showroom, and over the time it develops into a mechanic shop. He's been there all the time. No one asked any questions. It was never a problem. And then, let's put the mezzanine floor so we can put the spare parts. And you don't get any approval for that.
No, that's true.
And all of a sudden, when you're selling a business, well, all gets uncovered. And maybe it wasn't a problem for you, but
it's a problem for the purchaser.
it's a problem for the purchaser. And that affects the price.
Absolutely.
So if you come across something like that, how do you deal with it?
Well, what I say to the owners is you're going to have to obviously go off and get the DA to operate the business. And some of them are scared of doing something along those lines because they're worried that the business may not be worth as much. But the trouble that you have is when it gets transferred, the solicitors are going to find out. The solicitors are going to do their searches.
Yeah, it's going
so
to be...
you're going to have to bring it up.
Yeah.
So I bring it up with all the clients. And, because it's the tenant's responsibility to get the DA. So if you're the tenant, you're responsible to get the DA to be able to run that workshop in that current location. So it's very, very difficult for DAs at the moment.
Look, and it has to be done before you go to the market, because you may going to think it's easy. I don't want to go and spend money on this because let's find a buyer and we'll do it. And then you're going to find a buyer, you're going to start doing it.
And it could take 12 months.
It could take 12 months. And all of a sudden this guy's going to say, well, I need a business.
Can't hang around.
Yeah,
I need it
can't
tomorrow.
hang around. Yeah.
That's
and he's
right.
going to buy something else. So that's pretty good advice.
I think that's about looking at your businesses and advising your clients before you go to market.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes that some brokers are too quick to list the business for sale rather than giving the client the right advice and saying, hey, before we go to the market, we need to do A, B, C, and D.
Yeah, you gotta do.
You got to put your eggs
very
in
thorough
a row.
Pre-due diligence before you go to the
Absolutely.
market, because just ignoring all that, probably it's gonna cause you to lose a sale on the end. So all
Absolutely.
this work was done
Without any point.
without any point, and everybody wasted money, time, resources, and everything
Absolutely.
else. Okay, let's get into valuations if you can.
Yep.
All right. I know it's a hard question to ask, but to answer. But let's talk. How much are these businesses sold for?
Yep.
And before we get into that, I just wanted to ask you one question. How does the size of the businesses impact demand for them? Are the larger businesses more? Is it more demand for larger businesses, or is there more demand for smaller businesses?
It's a difficult one because it comes down to the purchaser's ability to buy the business.
Mm-hmm.
So some people may only have a couple of $100,000 to be able to spend on a business. So getting a business that's a certain size might suit that particular person. And then you might get some people that have a lot more to spend on the business. So the size of the premises really matters because they're making an investment into themselves.
Sorry, when I was talking about the size, I was talking about the size of operation.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So with the size of operation, you got a couple of things. You got how many mechanics you may have there, and other staff that you may have as well. So you have to have a lot higher turnover to pay for all that. So with smaller shops, you might have remember the old 2-man bays in a service station?
Yep.
You might have 2 guys that are mechanics that have been there for ages, and that business might only be worth $100,000. So there's a lot more people with $100,000 than there is with $700,000. So, but then you've got the people that have got the $700,000 that are wanting to buy the business and run it as a business. They're not necessarily always mechanics that are buying those businesses. They're more an investor.
Are there any contracts, like a government contracts, installation of certain devices, or anything like that impact the value or desirability of the business?
Look, most businesses are bought with unencumbered equipment. So are you talking about contracts as in the contract to do service work?
Contracted service work.
Contracted service work, yeah.
Like
we said, with mum and dads, no.
Yeah.
Some do service work for fleets. So there is a contract in there's not always a contract in base, but you've had that work for so long.
But there's a history.
It just keeps coming. Yeah. That's right.
So this part of the business, is it more desirable or less desirable?
Depends on the buyer again. The buyers may not want to deal with the franchise. They might not want to wait for that payment to come in 30 days. They might want to be paid today. Mm-hmm. So it really can depend on the buyer and the seller and what it's worth at the end of the day. So looking at those particular businesses, some people might look at it and go, okay, well, fleet work's great. I want to do all fleet work. I'm happy to carry that debt for a period of time. But I've also seen the fleet where the company goes bankrupt and the mechanic's left owing $100,000 or more in debt to that business, and they don't receive the money back as a creditor.
So he's got the benefits, but he's also got the risks associated with that, and it just depends on what your direction in business is.
Absolutely.
As a buyer, that you're going to either like it or hate.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, valuations. So can we touch on, look, we won't hold you for it.
Look,
but you know, I'll give you examples and let's talk about it. Let's go that way because I know it's hard. Because we know that the average business makes about $450 in income.
Yep.
So back of the envelope calculation, $450, you're going to make a wage for yourself and you're going to have a 10% profit or thereabouts.
That's right.
And that's, again, from the research that I've done. I'm not sure if it's correct or not. So you're going to make about $120,000.
Yes.
And you're going to have a few bays and you're going to have some sort of agreement. Let's say the value of that equipment. See, that's another podcast all on its own. But like equipment value. Equipment value, problem with equipment value is, are we talking liquidation value, orderly value, resale value?
That's right.
Or replacement value. But let's say if you were to set up this shop from day one, it would cost you $120,000. Can you set up a shop for $120,000?
Maybe $150,000.
Okay, $150,000. But this was done 10 years ago.
That's right.
Some of the equipment new, some it's old, some tiles are broken and whatnot.
That's right.
So that's this case scenario.
Yes.
What do you think the value of this is?
Look, it's a difficult one again, but I don't look at equipment as being an extra in a business. So what I'm looking at is sheerly the adjusted net profit of that business over the years. Mm-hmm. So looking at whether it's gone up or gone down or stayed stagnant. Mm-hmm. And again, looking at through COVID where it went, whether there's years that were during COVID, like possibly 2019, that you might just discount that and look at the before and after. Mm-hmm. Whereas previously, prior to COVID, I might have only looked at 3 to 5 years of financials. Now I'm asking for 5 years.
Okay.
Because I want to see the pre and the after. And the middle where COVID happened, we're back to a more standard business conditions now than what we were through COVID. So you may just discount that altogether. Mm-hmm. So that you're looking at the before and after. So if I had a business and there was $120,000 adjusted net profit, I would probably say to an owner to put that business on for $199,000 and plus stock. And take it
stock,
to the
we said it's small.
It's not as big as what it used to be.
5 to 10 grand in
That's
some
right.
of this.
Exactly.
So 190. So where do you think it's going to sell? I know you're going to put it on the market, but where do you think it's going to sell? What do you think the value is?
Look, to be honest with you, I'm using the multiples of between 1.5 and 1.8 times.
Of PBITA, which
Of
is
PBITA.
proprietor's earnings.
Correct.
Between 1.5 and 1.8.
1.8.
By
That's
the way,
right.
for all of those you that watching this and listening, this is not a financial advice. It's just a conversation. Each
That's
business
right.
needs to be looked
Absolutely.
at separately and valued separately, because there's a lot more
That's right.
factors that will affect a business, such as leases and rents and locations
Absolutely.
and staff and type of work that you're doing.
That's right.
But the reason why I wanted to get into it, and I really like to do this in this podcast, to give people some sort of idea where it is. And, this could be achievable. This may not going to be achievable, all right? And in some instances, it could worth more.
That's right.
But we have a conversation. So something like this. Okay, in this, you're looking about, I'd say, about $150,000 on the end. You would get a sale. There are some discounts from that and some cost of selling of the businesses. But
Well, look, I would agree. I think if a business like that, again, like you said, it can be the location of the business, it can be the amount of people looking at buying that business, creating competitive tension in the marketplace. Can really
having
work
a
quite
Peter
well.
for the broker.
Well, yeah. Look, we're very lucky in New South Wales. Anyway, I can talk New South Wales. Is a lot of the brokers that we have in New South Wales are pretty good. So they might be a little bit out on their valuation techniques, but genuinely they are going to try and help you sell your business. And I genuinely try and help my client achieve maximum value for their business. And in a lot of cases, I'll get them the full asking price or very close. So looking at where I don't like to give my clients a pie in the sky figure that's never going to happen.
Look,
it's a waste of my time and theirs.
Absolutely. But let's just bring it back to valuations. Question, you mentioned stock or inventory. It's not an issue because of the way that spare parts get delivered and supplied in the moment. Are there instances that businesses have to have a larger volumes of stock because they're doing certain particular type of work?
If you're talking about people that are doing plant mechanic, for instance. So what I mean by plant mechanic is you might be servicing trucks, tractors, commercial equipment.
Okay.
So you may need to have other items that are not readily available in Australia in stock.
Okay.
So you might be servicing excavators and things along those lines.
Yep.
So getting the parts into Australia, sometimes you might need to hold a bit more stock in those particular items.
So how does that stock affect the value of the business? Okay, and I'll tell you where I'm going with.
Yep.
Because if I was the buyer and I've got something that's operating in a business like you just mentioned, and then I've just got a standard business that doesn't hold a great amount of parts. So, and they make both money. Why should I pay $100,000 extra in stock for this, in supposed to buying this business that doesn't require that stock and keep that in my pocket?
There's two different mechanics.
Okay.
Right. So you got plant mechanics and mechanics that are working on cars on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
They're two very different things. So if you're buying a plant mechanic and you're buying a business that's dealing in trucks and things along those lines, the parts are more expensive. It's just simple as that. Mm-hmm. The bigger the part, the bigger the truck, the bigger the expense of the part.
Yep.
Right. So you'll have an understanding about that if you come from that industry. So if you come from an automotive industry, you're just servicing Corollas and Camrys and your Ford Falcons and Commodores, then you also have an understanding that you don't need to keep all the parts in stock because you can ring up and order those parts on a readily available basis. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you're dealing in
so
parts,
just coming back to the value. So if I'm a plant mechanic,
yep,
and I'm running plant mechanic shop, if I'm understanding you correctly, they're used to having a certain level of stock. And they will pay for the stock on top of the value of it.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
And is that some certain reasonable level what the standard is, or I'll pay whatever you have? Because sometimes we can talk about it. Well, actually, let's talk about it now. stock is not everything that you bought over the last 20 years.
Not
Right?
at all.
It's something that if you didn't turn over in the last 12 months, I don't think it'll be counted in stock.
I agree with you.
It may gonna be very useful one day for you.
That's
but
right.
They may gonna come in 10 years from now, so you don't want to invest money now to make
Absolutely.
money in 10 years.
So I normally use a rule of thumb of the stock paying full price for 12 months worth of stock, and then for the next 6 months, so up
For
to
12
18
months old stock
12 months purchased stock. So you've had the stock on the shelf for 12 months.
or less.
So you get full payment, right? Anything over that, so you from your 12 months to 18 months, you may only get half of that money.
Mm-hmm.
Anything older than that, you'll get zero,
Okay.
right? So if you've got $100,000 worth of stock, that stock turns haven't been there, and some of those items could have sat on the shelf, and yes, they have a worth, right? So,
But are you going to be able to realize the worth? Anyone's guess.
no. So in a lot of cases, I'll say to the owners, what you need to do is sell off that stock. It's a bit like me saying, sell that chassis dyno because you're not going to use it.
Yeah.
Right? The new owner, that's making you no money at all. So if you want to realize some value back, let's sell it now. So if you've got some
And
old
often you're going to
stock,
find out it's not sellable.
well, that's exactly right. So in a lot of cases,
the reason why I wanted to touch on this is you have to be realistic. Like,
Yep.
you know, because if you overprice your business, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
correct.
So this advice you need to take in advance.
Yeah,
And if the end figure doesn't work for you, well, maybe you're gonna look at for option B rather than selling a business.
that's right.
Anything else we should say about?
I suppose
this
coming
type of
back to your
businesses?
stock is that you can't go, okay, well, I'll go and buy $300,000 worth of stock. I'm going to get $300,000 worth of back. So, because it doesn't quite work that way. Because when I'm talking to someone about the stock in their business, I'm getting red flags ticked for me when they've got too much stock. When I hear the different numbers in stock that they have, and I'm saying, hang on a minute, why are you holding so much stock? Is it old stock?
Well, you got to look
really
at
old
you
stock?
got to look at the turnover stock. Is it 3 months, 2 months? If you got 12 months turnover stock, you got a problem. You're overstocked.
That's right.
You're overcapitalized.
That's exactly
You're
right.
overcapitalized.
So in
Look-
a lot of cases, you would try and clear that.
Well, one way of dealing with that, it could be consignment.
Yep.
Where I said, okay, I won't pay you anything, but I'm going to hold stock. As I sell certain items, I'll give you, purchase price for the items, and I'll
Yep.
take a profit.
That's right.
What about businesses that? So we talked about the smaller job type businesses, but
Yep.
you said that they, larger mechanics will make $500,000.
Yep.
Is the valuation similar, or it's a different? Because are we still talking PBITA, or are we talking EBITDA? Are we including owner's wage into calculation, or are we excluding owner's wage out of calculation?
In most of the things that I've done, normally we're including the owner's wages.
Okay, so using your formula,
Yep.
$500,000 business.
Mm-hmm.
Profit will sell somewhere around 1.5.
If you're talking about higher,
750 to 2 million.
it's difficult to, like a lot of people say to me, oh, I've got this much turnover, what am I going to sell for?
No turnover. I'm talking
Yeah.
profit.
I fully agree with you. I would still use those same sorts of margins,
Okay.
right? Me
Again,
personally, only because of experience.
I just want to make a disclaimer here. All right? it's not a business advice. You don't go and value a business. You call Peter. Peter sits down with you. He looks at all aspects of your
That's
business,
right, exactly.
and he gives you proper valuation. on
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
So looking at the different businesses and how they're profitable and how the owner takes the profit as well. So looking at where that all sits, but working with the accountant is important.
What do you mean by how the owner takes a profit?
Well, okay, so when you're looking at an owner might decide that, he's got some cars that he's got running through the business, right? So he may take profit in a different way. He may have a different company set up. So the way he passes profit.
So we're talking adjusted profit, not
Adjusted net
not what
profit.
shows in your tax return, but
No,
what
adjusted net profits.
adjusted for all depreciation and all the paper expenses and personal expenses, what the actual bottom line is.
Look, at the end of the
Now,
day,
look, you
what's the benefit to the one owner operator?
Okay.
What is your benefit in owning that business?
Yes. These are mechanic shops. What about panel beating shops? Do they sell different, or it's a?
They are different, yeah. Because panel beating shops will have contracts with people like NRMA and Suncorp and things along those lines, and some of those contracts are non-transferable. So looking at how they're going to sell is a different story.
Mm-hmm. Because, well, not that they're not transferable. So there's a normally change of control.
That's right.
In the contracts, change of the ownership or change of the control.
Yep.
And then you have to go and approach the supplier
Correct.
or insurer and say, listen, I'm selling the business, this new owner, and they have to evaluate this owner and get approval and say, yes, okay.
Same as a franchise.
Keep on dealing with this owner. Do they sell for based on the profits a little bit more, a little bit less, or the same, or you can't answer that question?
It's a difficult one to answer because when you're looking at those particular businesses, and again, every single business has got to be assessed individually, because the way different businesses are run is an important part of how we value a business. But also, if you're in Sydney, you could pay $180,000 a year rent. If you're in Western Sydney, you might pay $90,000 a year rent. And in other places I've seen, you get in rural, because I do a lot of rural sales as well, you could pay $35,000 a year rent. So those make a big difference. Your wages won't change a lot because we have standard wages in the country, but that rent figure can really make a big difference.
Okay, so business that makes, okay, again, I'm going to make assumption and you tell me if I'm correct or not, and then correct me if I'm not correct.
Yeah.
Let's say we got a business in good place in Sydney where you got, and then we got a rural country type business, and they make same amount of money.
Yes.
Are they going to sell for same price? I would believe that the one that's not in Sydney Metro, but it's actually a country business, rural business, will sell for less simply because there's less demand.
Correct. You're 100% right.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, that's exactly right.
So even if you look comparable sales, you have to put some sort of discounts for
where they are
for the location. Yeah.
You know, sometimes if they're in regional cities, you know, where there is more demand for businesses, like obviously Sydney is one of the Sydney and Victoria, Melbourne are very big markets.
Yeah.
You start to get outside of those realms, and then you get down in Wollongong. You'll still get good prices in Wollongong because it's still a Sydney, a metro area. Yeah. But then when you start, like I'll do businesses in Tamworth, Armidale, Bega, and places like that, where not enough people are moving to those areas to buy those businesses. So the answer to your question is, are they valued less? Yes. Do they take longer to sell? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It takes probably double the time to sell a rural business than it does to one in Sydney.
Yeah, well, it's a supply and demand.
That's right.
It's a less people.
Yes.
Very simple. And anything else we should cover? I mean, I think we went through a lot of things in one conversation.
All day, yeah. So there's so many different factors that we look at in different parts of the valuations of businesses. So
okay, so Peter, if somebody wants to sell their automotive business, how do they find you?
Okay, so there's a couple of different ways. One, you can call me on my mobile, which is 0450 811 955, or go to unitedbusinessbrokers.com.au. Or even easier, ubba.com.au, and you'll find me. Or give Zoran a call. I'm happy to send my number to them.
No problem. Look, we're going to put all your details in podcast notes and everything. And thank you very much for sharing all this great insight with me today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Need help selling your business, buying a business, or a business valuation? Exclusive Business Sales award-winning team are here to help. Our experience, skill, expertise, and professionalism, backed by our triple guarantee, is assurance for your success. The largest network of buyers and our national coverage will help you throughout Australia in all state capitals and regional areas. Exclusive Business Sales. Sell your business with certainty.